We've got a thumbs up, right. So it's 10:30. Good morning. Welcome to today's Planning and Right of Way Committee at Nottinghamshire County Council. I'm Richard Butler. I'm the chairman of the committee, and welcome to you all. And councillors with me or with us today are councillors Barnfather, Clark, Creamer, Henshaw, Meakin, Moxon, Ogle, Owen, Smith, Upton and Williamson. So welcome. So first item on the agenda is the minutes of the previous meeting on the 27th of July. Are we all happy that they're a correct record? Yep, move those. Thank you very much. And do we have any apologies for absence, please?
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Barnfather replaces Councillor Camilleri, Councillor Clark replaces Councillor Corden, and Councillor Allen replaces Councillor Fielding, all for this meeting only. Thank you.
Thank you, and welcome to our replacement members. Item 3 is, do we have any declarations of interest? Members of officers have any disclosable pecuniary interest to declare? I can never say pecuniary. Or any private interest, pecuniary or non-pecuniary. Does anyone wish to declare anything? I suspect not. Okay, thank you. Item 4 is declarations of lobbying. Yes, I'm referred to in the report on paragraph 41 for the Huthwaite application. Councillor Hollis did discuss the application with me. It was a fairly brief discussion, if I recall, between this chamber and down the corridor. So it wasn't exactly a long, in-depth conversation, but Councillor Hollis did make his views known to me. Does Councillor Creamer?
The same.
Right.
But yes, very short, very young.
Okay, thank you. Any other declarations of lobbying? Nope, I suspect not. Thank you. Right, so which takes us into our first application for today, which is 32 Sudbury Drive, Huthwaite. And this is a change of use from residential dwelling to a small 2-bedroom home for children and the care of local authority, and alterations of the front drive. And so who's John? Oh, sorry, yes, I did. Thank you very much. Well done for spotting that. Yes, I need to formally move the recommendations on page 41 of the agenda pack. Do I have a seconder, please?
I'll second, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Creamer. I really should read my notes more, shouldn't I? Yes, so thank you for that. And something I've just realised as well, I omitted to introduce officers to the meeting. So perhaps just for the record, if we could just have officers introducing themselves and what their roles are today. So apologies for that.
Thank you. Joel Marshall, Planning Officer, Case Officer for Two Oaks Farm. Thank you.
Good morning, I'm Jonathan Smith. I'm the team manager of the development management team.
And David Marsh, I'm the major project senior practitioner, and I'll be presenting the application for 32 Sudbury Drive.
Matthew Neal, Service Director for Investment and Growth, here on behalf of Sally Gill, Group Manager for Planning.
Hi, I'm Mike Hankin, Plan Application Senior Practitioner. I'm the case officer and I'll be presenting the waste transfer station at Collick.
I'm Neil Lewis. I'm the team manager for Countryside Access at the County Council. I'll be presenting the report on the registration of a village green. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Right, thank you for that. We'll now go back to 32 Sudbury Drive. And this is the application I've just described, and we will introduce the item. Please, David, Mr. Marsh.
Thank you, Chair. This application is for the change of use of a 4-bedroom house on a residential estate to a children's home, which falls within planning use class C2. The property is in the southern part of a loop residential estate road and lies opposite an area of open space. There is a traffic calming hump across the full width of the carriageway outside the property. An original garage at the property has been converted to a room, and there are currently 3 parking spaces in front of the house. One of the parking spaces is surfaced with shale, and to use it involves driving onto and off the property, partially on the traffic calming hump. The application proposes to move the traffic calming feature and to provide 2 speed cushions on the carriageway outside 30 Sudbury Drive, although this would be subject to a separate process involving public consultation. The house would be used as a children's home for 2 children, with 2 staff in attendance operating a 25-hour shift pattern. There would be 2 additional staff present during a handover meeting for 1 hour in the afternoon each day. There would also be a house car parked at the property, and a house manager would be at the property for 50% of the time, as that person would manage 2 properties. There could be up to 3 extra cars parked on the highway on an afternoon. These next slides show the rear garden and adjacent properties and a view from the first floor rear bedroom window. The property would be used to house 2 children in the care of the local authority. There has been significant local opposition to the proposal, and representations received to a second round of public consultation regarding the proposed relocation of the traffic calming feature, and also objections raised by the local member, MP and Ashfield District Council. The grounds of objection broadly relate to the suitability of the location to house children thought likely to have behavioural issues, which may change the character of the residential estate, traffic and amenity impacts of the use. The proposed use is distinguished from use as a dwelling by the provision of care, and if living in a single household, such as with fostering, the use would not need planning permission. The need for planning permission allows the impacts of traffic and amenity to be considered. The C2 planning use class includes residential institutions, which will vary in size. The proposed use is small scale, and other than for the attendant staff and associated traffic, will have the appearance of a normal house. Highways Development Control has commented on the highway impacts of the proposal on highway safety grounds and the relocation of the traffic calming feature. Although there is a low level of on-street parking on the residential estate, the parking of up to 3 cars on the carriageway for an hour each day is not considered to significantly erode the amenity of the area. In response to the reconsultation on the change to the application, reducing the proposed number of on-site parking spaces from 4 to 3, a further representation has been received from Ashfield District Council after the report was published, restating the concerns included in this report in respect of impact on the amenity of neighbouring properties. In addition, Ashfield District Council states, the revised submitted parking plan demonstrates 3 off-street car parking spaces in accordance with the County Council's minimum dimension standards of 2.4 by 5.5 metres. It is also noted that comments received from NCC Highways, dated 3rd of August 2021, has confirmed no objections to the proposal based on highway safety. Ashfield District Council raised concerns with the proposal and would recommend refusal of the application on the grounds of the impact on the amenity of neighbouring properties. It is recognised that there is significant concern about how the property may operate. Whilst in planning use terms the proposal is considered to be acceptable, it is recommended that planning permission is granted initially for a period of 2 years. Recommended condition 9 would require the applicant to log complaints and to hold meetings with local residents at a minimum of 6 monthly intervals. Monitoring the property in operation alongside records of complaints and meeting minutes will allow a better informed decision to be made about the permanent suitability of the use in this location. It is recommended that planning permission is granted subject to the conditions recommended in Appendix 1. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Marsh. Do any members have any questions for purpose of clarification at this stage? Councillor Barnfather.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Sorry, just in relation to the parking, you talked about potentially 5 members of staff, so up to 5 vehicles being a worst case scenario. But there are 2 members of staff on duty at any one time, so we're not taking into account any potential car share between them, so that could reduce the vehicles. And in relation to the manager presumably, if he's managing 2 properties and you're working on the basis of 50% of his time, works a 40-hour week. So I'm assuming that isn't 50% of 24 hours, 7 days a week. It's 50% of 40 hours, so 20 hours as a maximum. Presumably, I don't know, is that a Monday to Friday between the hours of 8 and 4 or 9 and 5? Or sorry, I'm asking questions you may not be able to answer. I'm just trying to clarify, you know, the worst case scenario is 5 vehicles, but the more realistic case scenario is 2 to 3.
Mr. Marsh.
Thank you. So the normal arrangement would be that there would be a house pool car at the house. There would then be 2 members of staff on shift working a 25-hour shift. And at the end of that 25-hour shift, there would be a handover period, an overlap of 1 hour, when there would be 2 additional members of staff at the premises. You're correct in that the assumptions which have been made in the report is that they don't car share, so they all arrive independently by car. The house manager works a normal office day. There might be some flexibility. I think the hours are in the report. I don't have the paragraph to hand. 9 to 5, but there might be some flexibility around that. So you would think within the window of 8 to 6, but they would be working managing 2 properties. So it's anticipated there would be at this property for half of that time and at the other property for the other half of their working day. Thank you.
Does that help? Yes. Okay, thank you. Councillor Owen.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Following on from that, has any consideration been given to the potential number of vehicles that may visit the premises? For example, children under the care of the local authority are likely to be supervised by social workers from the authority who are likely to visit. There may be other external agencies who may want to visit. Has any account been taken of those vehicles and the frequency of potential visits?
Not the frequency of those visits, but the applicant has indicated that those visits are likely to be occasional. But I think what is anticipated is that those visits are unlikely to take place at the time when the handover is taking place, because the staff will be engaged in their handover meetings. So the applicant would be able to organise the time when those meetings take place.
Do you want to come back, Councillor Owen? No. Okay, thank you. Any other points of clarification? Councillor Williamson.
Thanks, Judge. Out of curiosity, I mentioned obviously in the area there's a small road hump and talked about the possibility of that having to be moved, but it's not really any.
Could you speak up a bit?
Sorry, I'm a little bit croakier than normal today. Obviously, near to the property, there is a small road hump that I believe there was a mention of that this would have to be moved. Surely that's not something that obviously we're deciding today, but surely that has to be linked in with the entire process. If we're making any alterations, that is something that surely would need more information on.
So the road hump issue.
Works on the public highway in themselves don't need a planning permission, but it is something which, if appropriate, could be covered by planning condition. We have discussed the issue of the need to move the traffic calming feature with Highways Development Control, and we do have a Highways officer here who may be able to comment on that issue.
Yes.
Chair.
Is that yes? If you could, if you could just clarify and comment on that, please.
Hello, I'm Sarah Hancock, by the way, Principal Officer from Development Control. Yeah, the road hump can be moved under other legislation. There is a suitable place for it that has been determined, so it's not the siting that would be an issue. So it's likely that it just can be moved, but it's a separate process to planning, so can't be fully considered prior to determination. We don't foresee any issue in its reciting, but I understand that there is a move for it to be in situ and left in situ if the recommendation to approve for 2 years is carried out.
Is that helpful, Councillor Williamson?
It is. Could I just ask, as a further point of clarification on that, where the site is that it's been determined? It could be, because I know the area fairly well. I'm just curious as to where the new site.
It is slightly to the east, so it's adjacent to the next door neighbour's driveway.
It's set out on Plan 5 of your papers. Is it 6?
No, Plan 5.
Plan 5. No, it's Plan 5. Yeah. And it's on this slide again now.
And there it is
on the screen.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Any other points of clarification? No. Right, so we have some guest speakers on this item, and I'm going to ask our clerk, Mr. Barker, to read out the instructions and guidance as to how it all works. So, Mr. Barker, please.
Thank you, Chair. Excuse me. So each speaker, whether speaking as an individual or part of a group, has a maximum of 3 minutes to speak, with the exception of Councillor Hollis, who as a local member has a maximum of 10 minutes to speak. Notice will be given to you when you enter the final minute of your allotted time by me saying 1 minute. So speakers should not introduce new material, be that plan, photographs or written documents, and only issues relevant to the planning application should be introduced. And these include the impact on local residents and the environment, relevant planning policies and government guidance. So you should not refer to non-planning issues such as property rights, covenants, loss of property value or view. Members of the committee may ask you questions for purposes of clarification, and the chair will invite the relevant officer to respond to any factual matters raised by your presentation or subsequent questions. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. So we have 5 speakers for this item. I have Mr. Berry, Mr. Brabucki, Miss or Mrs. Norris, and a representative for the applicant, and then finally Councillor Tom Hollis. So our first speaker is Jonathan Berry, please, if you're here. So welcome, and as soon as you're ready, press the button and the light will come on and we'll be able to hear you.
Okay, thank you. In addition to the points that will be covered by my fellow neighbours, I would like to highlight a potential conflict of interest with regard to the proposed change of use, which will pose a risk to the residents' planned settlement in the home and the local community. The young people that will be placed in the home will likely have contact with Notts Police, Notts County Council, Youth Justice Services and Child and Adolescents Mental Health Services, CAMS. Contact with these agencies will mean that young people will have safeguarding needs relating to youth violence, criminal behaviour, including the need to face up to their crimes, taking responsibility for their actions and interventions to reduce their reoffending risks. That's actually taken from the Homes to Ends by website. It's also likely that it will be known to the Notts County Council Out of Court Disposal Panel. I'm an NHS mental health nurse and I work in the Liaison and Diversion Service. This service supports all young people entering the criminal justice services, either via police custody or via the Out of Court Disposal Panel. Any young person under the age of 18 detained in police custody is automatically referred to the Liaison Diversion Service, as well as social care, the emergency duty team and the youth offending team. I undertake face-to-face assessments of mental health and other vulnerable needs, including safeguarding and liaising with professionals such as social workers, CAMHS professionals, home care managers and probation officers. To do this role, I have access to a range of information regarding young people, including the finer details of any offences committed, any traumatic life experience they've suffered, and the reasons why they're generally in care. For example, violence and aggression, absconded incidents, drug and alcohol related offences, possession of knives in public places, county line drug exploitation, sexual abuse and exploitation, victims of domestic abuse, and online sexual communications and crimes towards minors. And this list is not exhaustive. My assessments reports go on to inform the police, the Crown Prosecution Services and the courts to make suitable disposal options. Given it is highly likely that young people placed in the home will have contact with the police, it's equally likely they will have contact with the Liaison Diversion Service and myself. After being made aware of my role, the level of information I know about them, and my report being used to aid decision making by the police and the courts, this will understandably pose a risk to destabilising the young person's mental state, especially when they recognise me as their neighbour. In turn, this could lead to their placement quickly breaking down due to an increase in feelings of anger, paranoia, reactive challenging behaviour and offending behaviours. There is also a risk of retribution acted out towards my property, family and self. I would thus argue that the above points will seriously impact on the success of the proposed service and the residents' progress with their planned care and support needs with Homes to Inspire. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Berry. Well within time. Thank you for that. Sometimes 5 minutes can seem ages and sometimes can be very quick. So thank you. Do any members have any questions for clarification? Councillor Creamer, please.
Just clarification. You bring up a very serious point about being recognised. I mean, within your job, is there a clarification? Would there actually be a? I've lost the words I'm looking for now. Conflict of interest. Would you be actually not be working with those particular youths?
Yes, if you'd like to come back on that, Mr. Berry.
Tristan, right, okay. So yeah, if I knew that sometimes when I'm on duty in Mansfield Police Custody, there's times after 4 o'clock and at weekends where it's just one qualified nurse on, and that could be myself. And by our management, we have told we have a duty of care to see that young person. The police will also want us to see them as well, so they can quickly dispose of them. So if they're distressed in the cell, if they're making threats to self-harm, it would be myself. I would have to see them. So when the cases get allocated via the out of court disposals panel, that's on a weekly basis. I think it's Thursdays. And so where they would refer it to the Liaison and Diversion Service, see if we can do some work with them, then yeah, they would. If I'm not the person on the panel, if I'm the person on the panel and I recognise the address, then that's when I would have to be passing it over to another colleague. But in police custody, if they're sat on the bench waiting to be booked in, I'm frequenting in that area as we go into the cells to see people. So I regularly, they will see me in police custody. So there's no getting away from it, really. They will recognise me at some point if they do come through our service.
Thank you. Is that helpful, Councillor Creamer? Yep. Okay, thank you. Any other points of clarification from members? No. Okay, thank you, Mr. Berry. So we'll move on to our next speaker now, who is Mr. Brabucki. Hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. Oh, sorry. Right. Well, I'm sure you'll tell us how I'm to pronounce it. So over to you. Thank you.
My name is Sean Babruki and I live at 36 Sudbury Drive with my wife Tanya, and our home and garden backs onto the property in question. Thank you for allowing me to speak today. You'll see from the PAC report that all the residents on our estate are opposed and have multiple concerns. This is because currently our estate is a peaceful and beautiful place to live. I'm here today to talk about a few of these concerns. It's common knowledge in these types of homes that the young adults have behavioural issues. These behavioural issues can often be destructive in nature because they are at an age where emotions are high, but they do not have the life skills and how to safely deal with their emotions. So from this behaviour, you often see damage to property, cars and sheds. It's a common occurrence not only where they live themselves, but to surrounding properties. Damage could also be caused by the young adults visiting friends and family, since our estate and the surrounding area offers nothing in terms of amenities to entertain young adults. Drug use or dealing is often a common problem in young adults with behavioural issues. Where do they hide the hazardous material, for example, needles? They are usually discarded in the gardens of surrounding properties or parks, of which there is a play park for young children opposite the proposed site. This reduces the safety to our residents and the children as they are exposed to hazardous materials left behind. Police presence on the estate. A freedom of information from Notts Police has been secured by a resident, showing that as of June 21, the 9 homes under Homes to Inspire in Notts have seen 1,081 call-outs in the last 3 years. On average, that's 3 call-outs per month per home over a year period. If the young adults try to escape a difficult situation in the home or evade the police, where do they go except to surrounding properties? I'm not, and I guess most of our residents are not trained for this type of situation. If the Homes to Inspire staff need to restrain the young adult, this will not only be traumatic for the young adult, but also for us as neighbours and our families. The Homes to Inspire Safe and Sound document does state that restraining of this nature is trained for, but is usually a last resort, so could be expected to be used. There will also be multiple staff, support staff, friends and family visiting. In terms of neighbourhood safety, we will have no idea who lives on the estate. Currently, we know our 6 immediate neighbours and their regular visitors, so this invites safety, comfort and privacy for our family. Multiple changing individuals at a house changes this current comfort. Therefore, the home will bring a loss of safety, privacy and disruption for the estate. The young adults need a placement better suited to their needs rather than a quiet private residential estate. So it's from these reasons and the many others submitted by our estate that we urge you not to recommend the facility to our estate. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Brabucchi. Do any members have any questions for clarification? No, don't see any hands, so thank you. And thank you again. Our next speaker on this is Linda Norris. So if you're ready to address us.
It's Mrs. Linda Norris.
Mrs. Linda Norris.
And I live at 40 Sudbury Drive. First of all, I'd like to thank the committee for allowing me to give my views on this matter. I'm very concerned for the residents and children of our neighbourhood about this request for a children's home for children in the care of the local authority. I'm also concerned for the welfare of the young people who will be placed at 32 Sudbury Drive. I understand these children need to be placed somewhere, but feel that this is not the right area, as it's a very quiet residential development, as previously stated, and these young people will be bored and could be accommodated elsewhere in the borough, closer to transport links, social amenities, schools and sport facilities. The children placed in care, in my opinion, will feel very isolated from the community. The local amenities are few, the library is only open 3 half days a week, and the local transport is just 1 bus, and the bus stops are not located close to the property. The change of use also means that the young people living there will be living opposite a playground intended for under 12s to play on. This will affect the safety of young children nearby. I will also not feel safe taking my young grandchildren to play on the park, and the other residents feel the same. With regard to parking, the reduction from 4 cars to 3 on the drive from the original plans, in my opinion, will only make the parking situation on the road worse. I've been told that up to 10 cars could be parked outside at any one time. This would include friends and family visiting, other professionals. And in the report by the Highways Department, it is stated that extra cars can park on the pavement. Well, I was always under the impression that this is illegal to park on the pavement, so this wouldn't be appropriate. The width of the bend is not sufficient to allow cars to park in the road and for traffic to pass safely, especially when children are crossing the road to the playground. The speed of vehicles on this bend is often in excess of the limit and causes problems with safety even now, and there have been a few near misses on that bend. The officials that were observing did this during the day, and in the evening it's a lot busier. We're retired now, and several residents are similar age to me, and we love living in this quiet area of Ashfield and hope to stay here. and we're not happy at the thought that children will be with problems will be living close by, and I'm sure you would all feel the same if it was close to your house. In conclusion, I'd like to plead with the committee to refuse the change of use. These children deserve to be placed in an area where they will be occupied and feel part of the community, not on a quiet residential street where they'll be bored and maybe fill their time with antisocial activities. I do not recommend that the committee approve the change of use. And I would also like to ask that the decision be deferred so that more information can be gained with all the extra information that's conflicting information that's been given. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Norris, just in time again. So thank you very much for that. Do any members have any questions for points of clarification for Mrs. Norris? No. Okay, thank you. Thank you again. Our next speaker is speaking on behalf of the applicant, John Hawkins. I think it's you doing this, isn't it? So.
Chair, Paul Cook as well.
Oh, sorry. Yes. So John Hawkins. Right. So John Hawkins and Paul Cook. You're going to have a sort of minute and a half or so each then, or 3 minutes between you. Okay, that's fine. So as soon as you're ready.
Thank you, Chair. There are about 980 children in care in Nottinghamshire, and most of them live in normal standard homes like those on Sudbury Drive. The majority actually live with foster carers, others with Ofsted registered adult carers in a children's home like the one being proposed here. 20 years ago, there'd have been a world of difference between the two, but nowadays a children's home is designed to look and operate like a family home. And Ofsted, which inspects and regulates children's homes, expects as much and has the power to close down failing homes and has a track record of doing so. Although differentiated from a planning perspective, as David Marsh explained in his presentation earlier, foster carers and children's home carers both need to be suitably qualified, and both, along with their respective homes, are subject to the same Ofsted regulatory and inspection processes. And there are actually hundreds of family homes across the county in which 1 or 2 children in care live perfectly normal lives with adult carers in a way that's being proposed here. There are lots of misconceptions that people make about young people in care, around which the views are then formed. So I want to just explain a typical child in care to address some of the issues and concerns that have been raised. Children in care aren't young offenders. Many of them will have been born into a sort of chaotic or dysfunctional household that's a long way away from the loving family homes that the majority of us will have enjoyed. National data shows that 80% of children in care will originate from households with incidents of domestic violence or alcohol issues or substance misuse, often all three. The young person will have been the victim of this, not the perpetrator. Just 2% of children are taken into care because of their own socially unacceptable behaviour. Despite this, a report published by Ofsted found that nearly half of children in care are afraid of prejudice or bullying or being treated differently if people find out about their backgrounds. There's 214 children in Nottinghamshire in care that originate from Ashfield. That's more than any other single district. How many of these live in a children's home in Ashfield? Just one, because we don't have sufficient homes. This is not a new or untried model of children's homes. Homes to Inspire has opened many of these homes in the county in the past few years, and they're working really well. And all are subject to a thorough risk assessment, because Ofsted demands as much, and it absolutely doesn't consider whether an area is too good or too nice, quite the opposite. Their risk assessment requires confirmation that that local area itself is a suitable place, little or no crime, good local schools, etc. And wouldn't we, Chair, in discharging our statutory role as corporate parents, want nothing better than the best home for them? I'm going to hand over to Paul now to just explain a little about Homes to Inspire.
You have to be very quick.
Well,
no, you're on.
Thank you. Yes. I mean, very quickly then, yes, just say Homes to Inspire, we're owned by the National Charity Short Trust, and our trustees and CEO, who are himself have been in care, really want to improve the life chances of these children. As John said, we've opened a number of these homes in Nottinghamshire, one in Ashfield itself.
I've got to interrupt you, I'm afraid, because we are rather strict on the length of time of speakers, and you have hit the 3 minutes now. And in fairness to our other speakers, I'm sure you'll understand that we have rules and rules, I'm afraid. So thank you both of you for your comments there. Do any members have questions or points of clarification for Mr. Hawkins and Mr. Cook, who was very brief, obviously? So Councillor Owen, please.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. As part of the planning application process, there will have been the statutory consultation of residents. But what I would like to know from the applicants is, were there any discussions, any attempt to liaise with residents in the area to explain to them what they've not been able to explain this morning because of the time constraints, in order to try and allay and alleviate fears that have been demonstrated by those residents this morning?
Thank you. So who's answering that? Is it Mr. Hawkins or Mr. Cook about the notification, this discussion with neighbours and residents?
Okay, I'll start off by explaining that actually Homes to Inspire have got quite a well-established and well-used process of community engagement prior to the opening of the home. And what we were slightly nervous of doing was starting that too soon and fettering the sort of community consultation with all of the statutory consultation that planning application is required to discharge, but actually do have that programme of engagement that we've used at quite a few homes in Nottinghamshire that we've opened recently, and that will be kicking in, I think.
Yes, thank you, John. I mean, once the home is granted consent, we then speak to, obviously, have engagement events while the home is being registered by Ofsted, including the opportunity to meet the staff, managers and the young people, because there's we've heard today, there's an awful lot of myth busting, really, that we haven't been very successful in doing, any of us, about looked after children. And that's the frightening thing, that people think they're all two-headed monsters. These are great kids, really. I was on a call, a conference with the new Children's Commissioner. One of your Nottinghamshire children, who was in our care, who's now at Oxford University doing law, said how disheartening it was for her when she looks on social media and everything else and sees all these objections, and she said they're really talking about her. And so it's very important that we, in part of this engagement, you actually meet some of the young people who you have some fears and worries about. And so we shall do that during the next phase if permission is given. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Owen, is that helpful, or do you wish to come back?
A simple no would have been enough, but it answers my question.
Right, thank you. Any other members, any points of clarification? No? Okay, thank you, gentlemen, and I'm sorry we had to run out of time on that. So our final speaker on this is the local divisional member, Councillor Hollis. And you have, how long is it? So you have up to 10 minutes.
Thank you, Chair. I will endeavour not to take up all the committee's time, but I appreciate, firstly, the opportunity to address members of the committee today and the chance to address the lead Labour member and obviously yourself as the chair over the last number of months and weeks as well. And this is actually my first ever, in the decade I've been on the council, first time speaking at the Nottinghamshire County Council Planning Committee. Which probably shows how important I feel about this particular issue. It's certainly not the first Sutton West niche issue, but it's the first time I feel that potentially members aren't being given the full information contained in the report, and potentially I don't feel the conclusions being drawn are fair. And to briefly explain my role, I know we've got a number of new members as well. I've been a member of the Planning Committee at Ashfield District Council for nearly a decade. Certainly planning isn't something I'm a novice at, but by no means as expert as some of the officers. And one of the things that I've certainly always endeavoured to do is recognise that we are local members and we are guided by professionals. And certainly officers' recommendations are always something that I hold very key in making a decision. The thing to note here is two sets of planning officers recommend different things. And to draw the comparison, if I may be so cheeky to describe it as if it was Councillor Butler PLC applying for the application today, it would be being decided by the local borough or district council. The only reason it's here today in front of a committee that usually decides things like coal mines, fracking and waste disposal is because the county council own the property. And let's move back to the fact that if Ashfield District Council were making this decision, they would recommend refusal, not only based on the planning policies that we hold true here, and I'll go in to discuss those, but also our own highways guidance, of which officers here seem to have been taking an interesting view on. And while today I really trust that and hope members would respect my view as the local member and turn this down today, at the very least I'd hope we could consider a deferral, so at least members could be presented with maybe a chance to have a site visit and also be have a chance to be furnished with more information. But if we first turn to page 22 of the report, paragraph 18, Ashfield District Council recommends refusal, and that details a number of reasons why the District Council would recommend the refusal. Firstly, policy HG8 of the ALPR 2002, which says that the development of residential care homes will be permitted where the amenity of neighbouring properties is protected. I hope, members, it's very clear to you today that from what you've heard from members, even from our own officers, it's clear that this place will have an impact on those residents, whether it be parking, which is my main concern, but also disturbance. And at this point, I want to be very clear that I support these types of properties. We all know the types of children's homes that kids end up in our district, most of which come from Ashfield and Mansfield. That's 90% of children in care come from Ashfield and Mansfield. I really want to see these properties built within Ashfield, but in the right places. And building one in such a wrong place like this will have jeopardy on the whole process. And the point being, we have heard the residents' concerns about disturbance. On Homes to Inspire's own website, they recognise that there's an increased chance of police call-out. The details very openly the call-outs they have. And the very nature of the children that are in these homes means that we've been unable to foster them. We've been unable to provide them with other alternatives. That's the reason they're there. Exactly, the officers from the County Council who present it are right in saying they aren't bad people, but there's an increased likelihood of them being troubled. And it's our job as corporate parents to make sure that they do seek the help. But to say that there isn't an increased likelihood of a problem, I think is disingenuous. That's the whole reason we're in front of a committee asking for permission, and that's the whole reason things like foster carers don't need planning permission, because there isn't that increased likelihood of a problem. We are professional people. We can acknowledge there's a problem there, but that's what this process is for. The other major issue I have is with the parking. It was very clear in the original application that 4 spaces was objected to by the planning professionals at Ashfield District Council, the residents, and it went against our own planning policy held at Nottinghamshire County Council. Those 4 spaces were then reduced to 3 spaces, in my eyes, exacerbating the problem. There is only 3 spaces, of which at any one time there could be up to 3 permanent staff there with the manager. With the changeover, there could be 5 cars there at any one time. That's acknowledged by the officers here as well. But let's not also forget, as mentioned in the report, these children could need homeschooling per children. So there could be 2 extra cars there. Friends and family, these could be 17-year-old people. Friends can visit them. They could have cars. There's an increased likelihood, and the report suggests that it's almost going to be treated as any other one of those properties. It's fairly obvious to the members here that that isn't the case. And the biggest problem I have is a reputational damage to Nottinghamshire County Council. We have on page, if members can bear with me 1 second, on page 35 of the report, paragraph 67, it is stressed that Nottinghamshire County Council Design Guide is what it says in the title. In that paragraph, it's talking about moving of the road hump, and also the fact that there's white lines marking outside number 32. If we can't stick to our own design guide as the county council, how do we expect Mr. Developer or Mrs. I'd like an extension to my house to respect our own rules when we can't respect our own? And to suggest that our design guide is some sort of flippant thing that can be just disregarded, I think carries serious reputational damage to any member, particularly who's on a district and borough, who relies on that same planning guide to make a decision. And to stress, we do want to trust in the officers to guide us, but we should stick to the very rules that we've drawn up. And later on in paragraph 68, it suggests that 20 years of white line markings, I'll try and find the exact phrase, were put down incorrectly, suggesting that, well, we can just be flippant or make our own rules when it's convenient for us to do so. If that was another applicant, whether it be myself, another member of the public, applying for a said drug rehabilitation unit, which of course this classification could be used for, or a children's home, why would I not be able to do those things, but the county council can seemingly say that it was an accident that we put those white lines? And it goes back to the reputational damage. So, and the other thing I just wanted to make clear to members was, I find it bizarre that we are passing today 2 years planning application. Let's just remember what that means. It means that we will be spending considerable amounts of our taxpayers' money doing up this property, resurfacing the drive so it's not shaled like is discussed, to potentially only be for 2 years. And I welcome Councillor Owen's point. I think it was probably the question I would have asked, actually, which probably says to members that know my and Councillor Owen's relationship probably says it all when we want to ask the same question. Why weren't residents consulted before and given the chance to have an open dialogue like any developer would do when they're building 30 houses, 300, 3,000? It's standard practice for a developer doing something that they know they're going to get objections to have an open, almost like an open house, if you can pardon the pun, where residents can have a chance to speak. So, and the only other final thing I want to stress, and I stressed it in the middle, was I seriously support this type, and I would welcome these types of properties being either purchased or developed inside my division. And I would do anything in my power to help, including the fact that I'm lucky enough to be the housing portfolio at Ashfield District Council. It's not uncommon for council properties to be freed up for use of this manner. I would gladly offer Ashfield District Council's help in doing that. But, and it's recognised that we do need more of these facilities within Ashfield District. These children need to be kept within our district. But those properties need to be in the right location, and our planning policies, at the planning policy beginning with H, which has just slipped my mind, HG8 I believe, says exactly that. And I don't want to jeopardise a process where I'd hope in the rest of this term we can purchase 10 or 12 of these properties within my division, fall at the first hurdle because we've made such a mess of it. I believe there's better properties, Mr. Chairman, within Sutton Town Centre, not isolated in a town like Huthwaite that's already been said doesn't have bus routes, doesn't have local amenities, and isn't suitable for the very children we want to put in there. So I would urge members of the committee to turn this down today. I understand that some members might be leaning towards a deferral. At the very least, I would ask you to consider that, just in the chance that we could have a chance to get more information, to have an honest appraisal. But I thank you again, Mr. Chairman, for allowing me and the local residents to speak. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Hollis. Just on 10 minutes, so just in time. Right, any members have any questions or clarifications for Councillor Hollis, please? No. I just point out that I know that there can be a perception that if a council is applying for planning permission, there's something from itself. In effect, it can look a little bit strange, perhaps, to members of the public or anyone who's not really familiar with the way it works. But I would assure you and all residents that the fact that one or the applicant is the county council, it is a completely separate entity from the planning committee, and it doesn't matter whether it's the county council making an application or member of the public or whoever. Every application is treated in the same way, and I will give you everyone's reassurance on that. Right, so there's no further questions on there.
Chairman, was that a question to me? Am I
No,
able
I
to come back on
I was just picking up on one of the points that I thought would be helpful to pick up on.
Okay.
So I'll open it up now for members to debate. And does anyone have any comments or questions? We will eventually come to a decision. So who would like to start off? So Councillor Williamson, please.
Thank you, Chairman. I don't want to try and rehash too much of what's been said through the men, but there's some points that I find quite interesting with this, and I do think they haven't perhaps been considered properly. I do want to just start by saying to the Homes to Inspire, I think what you're doing with these children is absolutely fantastic, and thank you for all the work that you do with them, because I do think it's a great thing that you're doing. But in terms of this application, there are several issues I have, and I think most of them have been raised by the residents, and some are detailed here, but I don't think they are properly considered. So the highways issues in relation to parking, first of all, I appreciate this is something that appears to have been looked at in a fair bit of detail, but are we able to go back to the map at all for the affected area, just so I can get the road up?
Yep, and it's also it's in everyone's packs as well. But if you want to refer to which map you're referring to, the plan number, I'm sure we can bring it up.
Plan 1 will be fine.
Okay.
I just want to draw members' attention to the application side and the fact that where it sits on this curved boundary. You can't tell the best from this map, although it is quite obvious that there's a sharp turn. Now, in terms of highways parking, it's noted and accepted in this report that there won't be enough off-street provisions. So at the times where we do have other people there, perhaps for the shift swap over, or when friends of the residents would be visiting, the opposite side of this boundary to the application site is an open field. There is a children's park there, and you cannot park on that side. So what we will see here is parking directly outside the application site, which is going to block the visibility of the curve of that road. You know, I've been down there hundreds of times in my life, thousands. Some of my family live not too far away from it. There is, in my personal opinion, with local knowledge, there is a quite strong chance of an unacceptable hit to highway safety, because you just will not be able to see around that corner with 1 or 2 cars parked there, and it will create quite a dangerous situation there. I've been down there at times when there have been no cars on there. Some of the speeding can be quite horrible, to say it's a residential estate, and I've nearly been hit on that corner myself. Away from that, I have, it was mentioned by Councillor Hollis about the time limits on the application. To me, that suggests that even, obviously, we're spending all this money, but even we're a little unsure ourselves. There's got to obviously be that doubt of whether this is a suitable site for this application. Otherwise, I don't feel we would have such strict time limit on it. Moving on to the area of Huthwaite as a whole, for members that aren't aware, the Whitegates estate, which is what we are looking at now, where this application sits, is off of a road known as Blackwell Road. That is coming out of Huthwaite village towards Derbyshire. It is quite a rural area, and this is one of the last turn-offs before you get down onto the country lane. There are no amenities here. You're looking at a good 10-minute walk to even be able to catch a bus from the main road from an area that buses aren't all that frequent from. It's quite a walking away from the town centre, quite significantly uphill as well. The area that this is going in, I feel, is going to leave the resident, the children that will go into this home that we're trying to look after and do the best for, with no amenities, with nowhere to go, with nothing to do. And forgive me the old phrase, but I believe there's an old phrase that the devil makes work for idle hands. And I feel that's a situation we could end up in here. I don't think there's any doubt whatsoever that this is going to impact on the amenity of residents. I accept that there are some falsehoods around the nature of the people that would be going into a facility like this, but it is also recognised, it's been stated in the objections, that there is an increased likelihood of police court lights, there is an increased likelihood of other services, probation services, coming to these properties, and that directly affects on all the residents close by. To me, it's an unacceptable effect on their local amenities. We've heard from residents who said they would be scared to go and use the park directly opposite this property, and I wouldn't cast aspersions on anybody that's going into these properties because, as I've said, I feel there's a strong need for them, but we can't be sure who's going in there once this is granted. That comes almost completely out of our hands and is up to the applicants and those that will run the home to decide who's going in. We don't know the issues there, so I do feel there's a grounds for almost an objection onto the safety of residents. I'm not opposed to applications like this, but it is not in the correct place. I could name 5 or 6 streets off the top of my head closer to the middle of Huthwaite, which would be much more suitable for one of these properties. And the last thing, just because I'm aware that I may start to waffle on in a minute, what I quite rightly highlighted, we've had this brought before us at this committee. We are recommending approval when the local Planning Authority, Ashfield District Council, who would normally deal with an application like this, have raised quite serious concerns and would this application be going before that committee, where they do have significantly more local knowledge than we do in this chamber, they would reject it. And knowing the planning officers at that council, I know they're competent, I know that they know the area, and I would trust their judgment on this. I'm happy to listen to all the members, but I think right now I would be minded to refuse this and move against officers' recommendations. But where the rest of the committee not minded to, I would strongly urge that you join me in deferring, just to allow for some more consultation and a better site.
Okay, thank you. Well, you picked up on a few points there. Don't forget that we really can't get involved in the issue of money and costs, because at the end of the day, this committee can only decide on the actual planning application. The applicant, whoever it is, they've taken a decision to put this application in. So we can't, we just can't decide whether it's good value or not, because that's not for this committee to do. But you have made some points about parking and amenities in particular. Mr. Marsh, do you want to just pick up and address some of those, please?
Thank you, Chair. Well, with reference to the issue of highways and parking, it's acknowledged that the parking for this proposed use is not going to be wholly accommodated on the application site, and reference has been made to policy HG8, which is set out at paragraph 48 of the report. We have considered the issue of the relocation, the proposed relocation of the traffic calming feature. That was something which was put forward by the applicant to try and, I suppose, present the application in what it found to be the best way forward. And in looking at where the traffic calming features may be relocated to, that's something which we've discussed in depth with Highways Development Control. And so we have Sarah Hancock here, who may be able to give some more in-depth comment on that. There are two sides to the impacts of traffic. One is, does traffic and the parking of vehicles make things unsafe? The other is the impact on amenity. And in commenting on Safety Policy HG8, at paragraph 73, we've made a comment on the amenity impacts, quoting from the supporting text to the 2002 local plan that explains that all proposals must ensure that the amenity of residents in the neighbourhood is protected and that undue disturbance or an adverse change in character of the locality will not arise. Depending on the type of accommodation proposed and its location, it will be appropriate to provide adequate private garden facilities together with on-site parking provision or communal open space areas. So that's something which we have considered in the recommendation which has come forward to members. It's acknowledged that there will be on-street parking arising from this proposal, but looking at the character of the area, there is some on-street parking which takes place on the estate during the day. It is fairly limited, but in terms of highway capacity, there is plenty of on-street parking capacity. So the issue will be that for the particularly during the handover period, which is seen as being the peak time when there will be cars attendant at the property, is whether or not that will have a significant amenity impact on the area, such that planning permission should be refused. Councillor Williamson has mentioned, why is a time-limited permission being recommended? Well, I think it is recognised that there is significant concern in the local area as to what the children's home may be, and in recognising that, a 2-year permission would allow the home to be seen in operation, so that those impacts can be assessed. So although there is mention of a deferring an application for more information, it's what information, further information could be provided, but the proposal would allow that information to come forward to be considered when this application comes back for a further approval. So,
are you looking for the amenities? Yeah, just pick up on there was talk about amenities or lack of thereof.
Oh yes, the lack of amenities. So paragraph 56, we've set out the distances to the various facilities. This is it's a property on a residential estate, and access to those amenities applies equally to the residents on that estate. But the application site, in terms of walking distance, is approximately 700 metres from the retail centre of Huthwaite on Marketplace, and 820 metres walking distance from Huthwaite Library. And after leaving the residential estate, the nearest bus stop is 270 metres to the east, close to the junction of the B6026, which is Blackwell Road, and the B6027 Common Road. So the site's in an urban area, and the care for children would have the same access to community facilities as other residents on the housing estate.
Okay, thank you very much. My next speaker is Councillor Creamer, please.
Thank you, Chair. It's just a question. I mean, going back to the 2 years asking seeking permission, by recognition of actual fact that of the concerns in the area, I think that's actually a good move. I do have concerns as well about setting up some sort of liaison committee, being as the applicant hasn't actually talked to the residents yet. So I want to see this place. I personally think it's probably in the right place, but because of the local concerns, because we've recognised there are local concerns, I would much appreciate a site visit before actually voting on it. It does look to me fine on paper. A lot of the arguments brought up, there's lots of words in it like normally, except things like that to do with the siting, etc. So there's leeway in that, which is just unfortunate the way it's written. The policy HGA is nearly 20 years old, 2002, so I don't know if it's being updated or in process of being updated. So we have to work with what we've got. But recognising those concerns, I think it's only right on this committee that we should at least have that site visit. The speeding issue, that is a completely different issue, and it's not a planning issue. Although having said that, living and working in an urban area myself, a little bit of overparking actually slows traffic down, so it can actually work against you in some respects. But yeah, I would appreciate actually a site visit of this to actually see the site itself. And I think it's only right for the public because so far they haven't had proper consultation. We've actually, the officers here have actually agreed there are concerns, which is a very good thing. So going along with those agreed concerns, I would actually ask the chair if we could have a site visit.
Thank you, Councillor Creamer. I'm not sure if a site visit would help because at the end of the day, members have had this comprehensive report for at least a week, and members are quite capable of visiting application sites. I know members do for in their own time. So whether a site visit will be beneficial, I personally would not think so, because again, as I say, members have had a lot of information and maps, and indeed may well have visited already. But that would be my stance, unless anyone else wishes to come in on that. Because at the end of the day, we've got to make a decision, and whether that's today or in the future, I suspect that the same concerns and points we've heard would come up as a result of the site visit. I really don't think it. That's my view. I personally don't think it would help matters. Regards to the engagements with residents, one of the conditions is to keep record of meetings with local residents. If you look at condition 9, so there, and keep records of any complaints. That's assuming if it goes ahead, to keep records of any complaints. So I think that point is probably covered there, unless anyone vehemently disagrees with that. Do you want to come back on that?
Yeah, just to say, I disagree. It is down there as part of the conditions. But as I say, they have been somewhat slow off the mark in consulting the residents. So I was trying to actually make sure that the county council has seen in its proper light, it's done its due diligence, which under you sit, I know it will anyway. But as I say, I still feel for politics with a small p, to act for the sake of the residents, I think it's right we should have a site visit. But I'll go by the committee's decision.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Upton, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Well, as a chairman of a district borough planning committee, as I often say, I urge members to keep focused on the actual application site and the material considerations for the planning law. We've heard what I would say, understandably, some quite raw emotions from speakers and suggested behaviours, but I don't personally see any actual factual backup behind that on balance. I've read the report carefully, and I mean, focusing on the material considerations in particular, I would draw attention, if I may, to item 50 in the report, and I'll read the second part of that, which is all to do about fostering and children in care. And it says, if the children would be cared for by fosters, the use would fall within the definition of use class C3, dwelling houses, and could take place without the need for planning permission. Good point. And item 54 and 55, where it talks basically about this application is not for young offenders. And if it was, then it would need use class C2A. And there is no permitted change if the use between C2A and C2. So I think that's an important fact there. And finally, as just been mentioned, item 64, or planning condition number 10, if we do grant permission, it's initially for the time-limited period of 2 years. I think that's very germane to the debate. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Upton. Probably no need to come back on those points, but noted. Any other members wishing to ask any questions or raise any points? No, I don't see any hands going up. So are we near a decision on this? I think we've got a lot of information on here, and I'm grateful to the speakers for their contributions and comments, and I do understand the perception and concerns that can arise on these sort of applications, and as indeed I'm sure the rest of the committee do as well. But also there are a lot of conditions and restrictions and items which I think will, this is my view, I think will protect the neighbouring residents, but also the welfare of youngsters who may be living there. So that's just my observations for what they're worth. So unless anyone else is wishing to speak, I think we better go to a decision. So I think Councillor Williamson. Yeah.
Sorry, just before we do go to vote anything, I appreciate by the views of some of the members here, I might be flogging a bit of a dead horse, but I would just once again finally urge you just to at least undertake a site visit before we do make the decision on this. I don't believe anybody other than local members are likely to have seen it, so I would just make a final plea on that point.
Okay, well, I hear what you're saying, but we are here to make a decision today. So, and so with that in mind, I think, I mean, I really do think that the points about the traffic, the amenity, and the concerns about who may or may not be in the house, I really don't think a site visit would add anything to that. But that's my view. Councillor Henshaw.
Chair, just a point of order. If a site visit has been moved and presumably second, shouldn't that be put to committee for us to make an appropriate decision?
We'll just get some legal clarification. Well, let's do it. We will, because it's been raised by a couple of members. We'll ask the question then. So who's formally moving that we want a site visit? Councillor Cream is formally moving. I assume Councillor Williamson is formally seconding that. So we'll take a vote then. Those in favour of a site visit, please show your hands. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, and those against? Okay, thank you. And then were there any abstentions? Oh, we do. Oh, right. It's very unusual to abstain on. Well, you are a member of this committee. You may be a visitor for today, but you are a member of this committee, so please remember it's important. But you've abstained. That's noted. So that was moved and seconded and voted, and it hasn't been supported, but it will be in the minutes. It will be noted. So right, we'll go back to the decision now with regards to the recommendations that is before us on page 41. So in the time-honoured way, can I have a show of hands of those in favour of the application? Please show. Okay, I've got those. And then those against? And 2 against. And for the record, no, any abstentions? No. Okay. Thank you. So permission is granted as per the report and the recommendations, and which I think the conditions there, genuinely think will be of considerable help. But thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for your contributions, and thank you for visiting us today. You're very welcome to stay for the rest of the meeting, or if you want to escape, you're very welcome to escape as well. Right. So, find my papers, and we go on to, well, we'll just wait a moment. So we'll go on to our next application now, which is item 6, which is variation to hours of working and lighting at Two Oaks Quarry. Coxmoor Road, Sutton in Ashfield. I'll formally move the recommendations on page 84.
I'll formally second, Chair, and reserve the right to speak.
Thank you, Councillor Creamer. Thank you very much. And Mr. Smith, if you'll talk us through this, please. It's not a conspiracy to have a non-working microphone.
Apologies, Chair. Thank you. This application seeks changes to hours of working and lighting at Two Oaks Quarry near Sutton in Ashfield. Two Oaks Quarry is a large silica sand quarry located off the A611 between Kirkby and Ashfield, Sutton in Ashfield and the southern edge of Mansfield. First granted planning permission in 2013, mineral extraction is now in the latter parts of phase 1 in the northeast quadrant. The fields to the west and south form future phases 2 to 4. As shown on this aerial photo, in the centre of the site is a substantial processing plant, stocking areas and vehicle parking and access roads. There are also a series of large temporary silt lagoons along the eastern boundary. The quarry borders woodland managed by Forestry England and which is publicly accessible. The woods are also a local wildlife site and in certain parts provide habitat for breeding nightjar. Nearby Coxmoor Golf Course is also a local wildlife site. The nearest residential properties are shown on this slide. They include some properties on Thieveswood Lane, 500 metres to the north, and several clusters along the A611, which are 250 to 300 metres from future extraction phases. Over recent years, a number of variations have been granted to increase the permitted number of HGVs serving the site. This proposal does not affect the authorised timings or number of vehicles. The application proposes variations to 2 conditions. Firstly, condition 21 stipulates the hours that certain activities can take place. As shown on this table, it is proposed to vary 2 aspects of this condition. The first is to enable the processing and conveying of minerals to take place unrestricted 24 hours a day between Mondays and Saturdays inclusive. The same hours are sought for the servicing and maintenance of plant and machinery, albeit that the additional hours would only be used in an emergency. Initially, the application also sought to undertake mineral extraction over these extended periods, but that no longer forms part of the proposal. Secondly, condition 15 is proposed to be varied to permit the associated flood lighting around the processing plant and access areas to be operated for the extended period. No new lighting or physical changes are proposed. As with previous variations, these proposals are driven by increasing sales and demand for the mineral products. The processing capacity of the plant site during existing permitted hours is now the limiting factor, rather than the capacity or timings that HGVs can haul the material. To allow processing operations to take place over these extended hours, a stockpile of dug mineral would be built up during the current daytime hours adjacent to the end of the remote conveyor system. An excavator would then feed this material into the conveyor during the extended working times, and in turn, the main processing plant would dry and grade the product ready for export the next day. Objections have been received from one local residential property on the grounds of noise and lighting. Comments have also been received from the nearby Shield Observatory. They do not object, subject to ensuring that flood lighting is operated correctly and only when required. Ashfield District Council have not objected, but raised some concerns over nighttime noise and increased lighting. Nottinghamshire Wildlife Trust have objected on grounds that nighttime noise could be detrimental to nightjar breeding behaviour. These comments are, however, based on the original proposals, which includes 24-hour mineral extraction, which no longer forms part of the proposals. Natural England and the County Council Ecologist have not objected. The latter is satisfied that there are adequate controls to prevent impacts to breeding nightjar. The Council's appointed noise consultants have also not objected, but request new and amended conditions. The principle of supporting the quarry and meeting increased minerals demand is strongly supported, particularly at a time of economic recovery. The quarry produces specialist silica sands for the sports industry, as well as other general aggregates. The Minerals Local Plan and National Planning Policy seek to ensure a sufficient supply is maintained. Despite increased rates of output, there will remain significant remaining reserves to serve the plan period and beyond. Great weight should be given to the benefits of mineral extraction, including to the economy as required by the National Planning Policy Framework. The quarry is in a rural situation, although there are a number of outlying properties in the area, as set out on this slide. The woods are also of local recreational value. The properties are protected by noise limits within the planning conditions, which are regularly monitored. A noise assessment demonstrates that the extended processing operations can comfortably meet the required nighttime noise limit, and therefore there will be no unacceptable noise impacts to any nearby properties. The Council's noise consultant recommends, however, that the noise assessment work is revisited prior to entering phases 3 and 4 to inform the location of any conveyor system to serve these future areas. All the existing noise limits would still apply, and the working methods would need to be designed to comply. Recreational users in the woodland may experience extended hours of noise and lighting. However, condition for ecological reasons remains in place to limit noise at the woodland edge, and which would also serve to limit noise to local walkers. The flood lighting is all correctly installed, lighting only the operational plant and access areas. There is no lighting in the surrounding extraction areas or close to the woodland. Less than 3% of total light is escaping skywards. There should be no increased lighting impacts to the Sherwood Observatory. The objection from the Wildlife Trust has been considered. The Minerals Planning Authority and the Council's ecologist has the benefit of annual reviews and noise monitoring required under the planning consent, which are in place to protect breeding nightjar and woodland should they be using the woodland areas. The Council's ecologist is satisfied that the current arrangements remain fit for purpose should the nighttime processing and lighting be permitted. Dust and air emissions will remain controlled and monitored under the Planning Permission overseen by the County Council, and also an environmental permit as overseen by Ashfield District Council. The proposal may result in increased operations of hours in the hours of darkness with consequent reliance on flood lighting and energy requirements. This will put the proposal in tension with Minerals Local Plan Policy SP3, which requires all aspects of minerals development to minimise impacts on the causes of climate change and reduce greenhouse gas emissions. In response, the applicant advises of various initiatives being developed, including a move to using biodiesel for on-site mobile plant, which would result in significant carbon savings, outweighing any increased emissions from extended periods of lighting. The applicant could be asked to investigate more energy efficient lighting products that are now on the market. Minor updates and additions to conditions are required if the proposals are approved. A legal agreement is in place governing a range of matters, and this will continue to take effect. A local liaison committee forms part of this agreement and is due to meet in the coming weeks. In conclusion, after considering the impact of the proposals to both residential amenity and the wildlife and species in the adjacent woodland, officers are satisfied that no unacceptable impact would arise. Any tension with climate change objectives is clearly outweighed by the need for and benefits of enabling increased mineral production, and it is apparent that initiatives to reduce carbon emissions from the quarry are actively being pursued. The recommendation is therefore to grant permission for the variations to conditions 21 and 15, subject to a small number of other updates to the conditions as set out in Appendix 1. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Do any members have any questions or points of clarification at this stage? Councillor Creamer.
Yeah, it's just a question on clarification, because when it came through originally, because of the nature of the sand being such high quality for sports grounds, etc., cricket pitches, football, it was mainly cyclical. So the increase, I've got no big problem with it. I just wonder, is there a cyclical element to it as well, that it'll be busier at certain times of the year, or is it just going to be continuous now? That's a general question.
I think initially they were, it was a very, they had certain peaks, particularly May, June time of the year. I mean, they provide products to many professional football grounds, and you know, when the football season ends, those grounds are stripped and they are resurfaced, and a lot of them use products from this company. But I think in general, since moving to the new quarry, there has been a general uplift in the, you know, in the sale of those products, but also in the sale of general aggregates that they produce as well.
Is that helpful? Okay, thank you. Any other questions, clarifications? No? Okay, thank you. So we have one public speaker for this application, who is Mr. Mark Aldridge, who is the agent for the applicant. So you've been here before, haven't you? I'm sure. Yes. So you have up to 3 minutes to address us. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. Ladies and gentlemen. Two Oaks Quarry is unique in that it's the sole quarry producing specialist silica sands within the county of Nottinghamshire, and as such makes a significant contribution to the local economy by way of rate contributions, day-to-day purchases of supplies, the use of local specialist contractors, and the use of local hauliers to deliver quarry products. The quarry produces a range of specialist industrial, sports construction sands and specialist fibre sands, which are used for equestrian and sports use, along with top dressing of bowling greens, football pitches and golf courses within the UK. The high quality silica sand has developed a national reputation as being #1 for sports sand, supplying all the materials to local and national Premier League and Championship clubs. Manchester City, Liverpool, Newcastle and Leicester, to name a few. The asphalt sand is recognised as the best in the industry and can travel nationally, whereas other sands cannot. It should be noted that Mansfield Sand have also made it through to the Nottingham Business Awards final for the Company of the Year, supported by the responsible, sustainable and entrepreneurial approach to business ethics. The COVID-19 crisis initially saw sales flatline from April 2020, which was mirrored across the entire quarrying industry and threatened to damage the core of Mansfield Sand. However, the last 12 months has seen a significant uplift in sales due to the strong relationship the company has built with external stakeholders. As the PM has vowed to build Britain, Mansfield Sand have picked up new customers in Wales, Scotland, and now rely heavily on that and form a backbone to the business, which has helped to keep the company afloat throughout the pandemic. It is therefore imperative to process stockpiled sand within extended working hours. The need for this business is critical, and without this extension hours will not provide stability to the company and the local economy. The applicants are therefore looking to future-proof the site and wish to increase sand output, but without exceeding the approved hours of sand extraction in the quarry area and HGV movements. By doing so, the processing plant with its extended hours enables continued production at good levels to take the quarry through the various phases of approved development. The specialist noise, air emission ecological studies accompanying the application have shown that, in the opinion of the company's consultants, the increased hours of workings will have negligible or no impact. However, the applicants recognise the operation should stay within the scope of the approved planning conditions and are not proposing to extract sand during nighttime working hours or generate any nighttime HGV movements. It is considered the development is acceptable and there will be no environmental harm associated with the increase. The applicant has a first-class relationship with the local community through the local quarry liaison groups, and meetings are relatively frequent at the request of the attendees as the quarry operates without disturbance or concerns to local stakeholders. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Aldridge, just in time. Do any members have any questions or points of clarification? First of all, Councillor Henshaw, please.
Thank you for your contribution. In the report, it states that obviously lighting is a very important issue, notwithstanding the fact that there's one of the best local observatories in the country, not too far away. And obviously it mentions that there should be an open dialogue between the company and the Sherwood Observatory. I'm not sure whether you'll be able to answer, but can you tell me and the committee, has that dialogue started, and how will it be maintained in the future? The other point in relation to the lighting, I know that in relation to the carbon emissions, in paragraph 153, there's an indication that if some of the lights were replaced by more efficient LED lighting, it could further reduce the carbon footprint of the works. I'm just wondering if that could be a consideration for the applicant to change the lights into the more efficient LED types. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Henshaw. So are you able to pick up on those
Yes, thank you, Councillor. During the process of the application, we were going to meet with the observatory, but we had a discussion with the observatory, and we allayed their concerns, and basically we reached an agreement that they will notify us of the times and days when they're looking particularly to look into the sky, and we will turn off the lights if we can. We will turn off the lights and work with them. They remain a member of the liaison group, and we have a first-class relationship with them. Dealing with the second point, I think from memory there are 116 lights in the site, 47 of which have now been changed to LED. Each change costs £5,000, which isn't a committee consideration, but the company are working on a proactive basis as and when lights need replacing to replace those lights. One further point, we did get consent, I got consent for a solar farm a few years ago, which didn't happen. We are now in discussion due to strengthening the grid. I'm sorry, it's an additional point. I won't make it. All right. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Is that helpful, Councillor Henshaw? Yeah. Okay, thank you. Any other questions or clarifications? Right, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Aldridge. So we'll open up the floor now for debate and discussion and decision. So does Councillor Barnfather.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I remember this application coming before us in 2013. I sat in your seat at that moment in time, and we had a number of objectors who came to committee on that occasion with some understandable concerns and trepidation about the development of this quarry. The reality is you can only quarry where the base material that you're seeking to quarry is situated. That is at Two Oaks Farm. Those concerns that were raised at that time have since been found to be unfounded. I know from speaking to some of the organisations that were represented at committee on that occasion, who markedly are not here today to object, that their concerns actually have not materialised, that the quarry operates relatively unnoticed by the local community, and I can say that as the divisional member that my divisional boundary is very adjacent to the quarry boundary. You do not know that the quarry is there. You rarely see HGV movements from the quarry because of the way in which they conduct themselves. The noise lighting issues that were feared have not materialised. As I say, it's very obvious by the fact that we do not have speakers to object to this extension today. This is a successful local business. We should be supporting successful local businesses where it does not impact on the community, and I totally support the application before us today.
Thank you, Councillor Barnfather. Probably no need to come back on that. You're not expecting any sort of feedback, but Councillor Williamson, please.
Excuse me. Thank you. As probably the closest member in this committee after Councillor Barnfather, actually, I do think it's slightly close to the site. I do actually have to largely agree with what he says. It is a site that generally works perfectly well. You don't see too much. You don't really notice it's there unless you are going past, which I thank the applicants for, because it has been a successful local business. Personally, as there's parts within this paper where we are referencing to the lighting, I do have worries about that, and I do have worries. As one of the written objects has stated about the impact on night jars that breed in the local habitat, but provided that those are monitored, and provided that, as has been alluded to by the speaker, that the ongoing communication carries on with Sherwood Observatory, which is something that we intend to expand upon on a local level in the coming years. I'm happy to support this, provided that communication is ongoing and that you are able to meet their needs, obviously, for such an important local item. That's really all I've got to say on it. As long as we meet those conditions, I'd be happy to support.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Williamson. Well, I think we heard, as we heard from the applicant and from the other question as well, I think there is a wish to continue to be a good neighbour, and I think there is understanding as to the concerns of the observatory in particular, and the night jars are noted. Any other comments, questions, queries? I sense not. So, right, we'll go to a decision then. So we'll have a show of hands. Those in favour of the application, please show. I think that's unanimous, and for the record, no one against and no abstentions, so permission is granted. I might just say that it was interesting to hear your interesting mix of football clubs, which will either impress people or won't, depending on their point of view. So, but it's interesting that material is literally going all over the country. So, and it's so specialist. So, thank you for the.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for your support today. And it's good to see you all here beyond the COVID crisis. And I welcome
it's
that.
It's good to be here. It's what I think it is. Yeah, it is good to be here. So, thank you. And so the applications carry on. So we go on to item 7 now, which is the development of a waste management facility at land off private road number 3 at Colic Industrial Estate. So I'll formally move the recommendations on page 148. Councillor Crawley.
Formally second, Chair, and reserve the right to speak.
Thank you. And Mike Hankin, you're going to talk us through this.
Yes, thanks, Chair. This, as the slide shows, it's for a plan application to develop a new waste transfer station and ancillary development at private road number 3, Colic Industrial Estate. The application site is centrally located within Colic Industrial Estate, occupying a corner site on road numbers 3 and road number 5. The application site is currently used for the storage of drilling machinery, and the applicant also uses part of the site for the storage of empty waste skips and containers. The site measures 2.1 hectares in area, is flat and incorporates no buildings. The land surrounding the application site is industrial in character. The nearest residential properties are located within Netherfield beyond Colic Loop Road, a distance of over 280 metres to the north. In terms of the development sought planning permission, the applicant, Veolia Environmental Services, operates a network of waste management facilities throughout Nottinghamshire as part of delivering the County Council's integrated waste management contract. These facilities include a waste transfer facility at Frith Street in Nottingham City. The Frith Street site has recently been extensively damaged in a fire. The area surrounding the Frith Street site is scheduled for comprehensive residential redevelopment over the next 15 years as part of the Riverside Regeneration Project, and the City Council is encouraging the existing businesses to relocate to facilitate the redevelopment of that area. Hence, Veolia are looking for an alternative site. Planning permission is sought to develop and operate this new site at Colic Industrial Estate. The main feature of the development is the construction of a waste transfer building measuring 71.6 metres by 41 metres, constructed with a pitched roof with the eaves height of 11.3 and a ridge height of 13.2. The development also incorporates a new office and welfare, odour attenuation unit, weighbridge and office, site surfacing, drainage, parking and manoeuvring facilities. The transfer station would provide a bulking point for up to 125,000 tonnes per year. Waste inputs would comprise of a mix of recyclable and residual waste streams, which would be deposited into a series of segregated bays, both within the building and externally. The waste would be bulked and, in the case of residual waste, shredded to produce refuse-derived fuel prior to the waste being transported to waste processing facilities for treatment. The core operating hours are between 6 and 10, but scope is sought in the application to allow some limited waste importation and processing through the night. Delivery vehicles would access the site from private road number 3, utilising the existing vehicle access, which would be improved. Access for cars would be obtained from road number 5. In terms of the consultations, the Council has received no objections to the application from any statutory consultees or members of the public. In terms of the planning considerations, the Colic Waste Transfer Station would form part of a network of waste management facilities which would contribute towards the sustainable management of both municipal and commercial and industrial waste streams, enabling them to be bulked for onward transport for recycling, recovery, consistent with the waste hierarchy and waste core strategy policy WCS3. The location of the development within Colic Industrial Estate is supported by Waste Core Strategy Policy WCS7, which prioritises industrial locations for the development of new waste transfer stations, subject to there being no unacceptable environmental impacts. The plan application is supported by a series of environmental assessments, which have been examined through the plan assessment with appropriate advice taken from technical consultees. The application site is remote from residential properties, which assists in minimising potential amenity impacts. The design of the waste transfer station and operational practices employed across the site seek to minimise environmental emissions and minimise any adverse effects on noise, odour, dust, litter and drainage from the site. Access to the site utilises established industrial roads with direct access to the primary highway network, ensuring that there will be no adverse highway safety or amenity impacts. The recommended planning conditions set out within Appendix 1 of the report, together with the controls imposed through the environment permit issued by the Environment Agency, would provide satisfactory regulation of the environmental effects of the development, controlling the level of emissions and ensuring the development is compatible with the surrounding businesses and commercial uses within Colic Industrial Estate. One matter is an update to the report. We've now received constitutional comments. This is on page 148, and they confirm that the decision falls within the terms of reference of the Planning and Rights of Way Committee. The recommendation, therefore, is to grant planning permission subject to the conditions set out in Appendix 1. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Hankin. Do any members have any questions, comments? No. Councillor Creamer.
Just to actually support it, I mean, Viola did actually need a new site because the Free Street burning down has already been said, and it's only about 2.5, 3 miles away from the existing site, so there's less disruption for Broxtowe, for everybody that uses the existing site. So, and I suppose I better declare just that I'm a Gedling councillor, it's not along with others, but I've got no financial interest in it, no pecuniary interest. But it's good for Gedling in one respect.
Okay, thank you. Right, as you will have noticed, we have no other speakers on this, so really we're going straight into debate now or decision. So does anyone wish to make any comments or questions, or shall we go to a decision? I think we'll take a vote. I've got a strong instruction and feeling from my colleagues here. So a show of hands, please, for all those in favour. It's unanimous, I think, just to confirm, no one against and no abstentions. So thank you. That's permission granted as per the report and the conditions. Right, our final application is one that's slightly new for this committee. Well, it's not a regular occurrence, but this is a requesting of a new village green decoration on Back Lane and the Pinfold in Misson. And so this is another aspect of this committee we have to look at. So Mr. Lewis, please, if you'd like to talk us through that. Oh, sorry, yes, I need to formally move the recommendations. Do I have a seconder, please?
Formally second, reserve the right to speak.
I was getting carried away. I'm terribly sorry. So Neil, if you'd like to talk us through this, please.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, so Neil Lewis, Countryside Access Manager for the County Council. The purpose of this report is to inform members of the committee about an application which has been submitted by Misson Parish Council. This is to register a village green in their parish. Nottinghamshire County Council is the registration authority for greens and common land, and we hold the legal registers which show the details of their location and the various rights which go along with common land. Applications can be made by an owner to add land as a village green, as long as the registration authority, the county council, are satisfied that they own the land and there are no other restrictions on it. Applications can't be rejected if they fulfil the criteria. And also, importantly, there is no requirement to consult on applications. So the application here before us today has been submitted by the parish council. They are now owners of this land. If you'd like to have a look at Plan A, you can see that there's already 3 areas of village green. These were registered by Misson Parish Council in the 1970s, but they didn't register the one today because the PC didn't own this at that time. The land in question is an old pinfold. So you're probably aware these were used to keep stray animals in, and they date back, and there's mention in the 1760 enclosure award. The pinfold is also in the village conservation area at Misson. And over the years, the small enclosure of the old pinfold has become overgrown. But the parish council has cleared the land. They've restored an old boundary wall, They've taken consultation and advice from Bassett Law District Council and Nottinghamshire County Council's conservation team. The parish council are going to continue to maintain the land, and they also plan to install a wooden bench and undertake some planting on the site. We've been in touch, of course, with the local member, Councillor Taylor, and she has no objections with the proposal. So for County Council, the procedure is fairly straightforward. We'll make a new entry in the legal register, which is held by us. The land will be protected from future encroachment and development. And of course, the land will be available for members of the parish to carry out lawful sports and pastimes. So things like playing games, having picnics, fetes, events, dog walking and similar activities. So the recommendation, Chair, is to endorse the voluntary registration of a town or village green by Misson Parish Council. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lewis. Thank you very much. We have no public speakers on this. Do any members have questions, clarifications? Councillor Creamer.
Sorry, just for clarification on Plan A, a village green 71. There's two actually striped, one not at all, and a stripe. Are they literally at the moment all but the pinfold village greens? I assume they are.
Yes. Yeah, yes, thank you, Councillor. So there's 4 on the plan there, which you can see. The 3 with, there's VG 71. So they're all village greens. And of course, the pinfold is the one labelled application land to the south of that. So that's the one which is going to be registered. It's all within that sort of extent of that area.
Thank you, Councillor Creamer. Any other speakers? Councillor Barnfather.
Very briefly, Chairman, it's nice to have an application for a village green before us, where it's not a piece of privately owned land that is likely to be subject to development, and the application for a village green is merely to thwart that process. It's nice to see this one's been brought by the parish council for all the right reasons.
Thank you, Councillor Barnfather. I was thinking very much along the same lines, actually. It's when you read the report, it's rather, oh, no, I won't say, well, I will, because I'm saying it anyway, it's quaint. But it's just a nice, very British English thing, isn't it, to talk about village greens? And if only all items could be as friendly as this. Anyway, I don't think there's any more comments on this. Shall we go to a decision? All those in favour, please show. Thank you. Unanimous, no one against and no abstentions to the record. Thank you. And the final item is for noting, which is the Development Management Progress Report. Do I need to move this? Or do I, yes. Oh, yes, I do. Yeah, I need to. I'll read the note again. I formally move the recommendations on page 186. Councillor Creamer.
Formally second. Yeah.
Thank you very much. And Matt, are you? Sorry, Jonathan. Are you?
Yeah, I'll to call this. This is the standard report to members detailing the applications we've received and determined since last committee. Just in respect of paragraph 2. With respect to the mention of potential site visits and what is in Appendix B, which sets out the future work programme, we do have applications coming to committee in the near future, both at Banticock Quarry and at Barton in Fabis. In respect to Banticock Quarry, the applicant has contacted us asking if members would like to undertake a site visit. I know some members who are here today will have undertaken site visits in the past in the past to this quarry.
Oh, hello, Linda. Right. Well, there we are. Back to you, site.
Carry on.
Yes, please.
The British Gypsum have offered to take members to the Banticock quarry. It's the only quarry in the county where we undertake blasting. We've got a significant application there for a southern extension to the site. And so if members are interested in undertaking a visit there, I can start to make arrangements for that. And similarly, I say at Barton in Fabis, it's a major new sand and gravel quarry. It's resulted in a significant amount of public interest. And again, I think it would be in members' best interest to undertake a site visit for that as well. So if members are okay with that, can start making arrangements for those.
Thank you. Right, any members wish to comment or question on this, or Councillor Barnfather and then Councillor Owen?
Yeah, just an observation. Having done a site visit there before and watched the blasting taking place, for members who are perhaps who've not experienced it or unaware of it and might have some concerns about such an application, it is well worth that site visit.
Thank you. And Councillor Owen.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. To be honest, I think more or less as a matter of course, we should have site visits to the application sites that come before us. There was a lot of discussion this morning about a site visit, and I know particularly objectors do feel that they've got things that they ought to be able to point out to you on site, and there's value in having officers there. And I'm happy to go to the quarry on the condition that I can push the plunger and blast it up. Can that be guaranteed?
Yeah, we want to try and avoid having to have a by-election, but anyway, so yes, I think the general answer is, on a serious note, yes, site visits are, especially for applications such as the ones we're talking about. I think it's fair to assume that we would all be in favour of that. So if we could set the ball rolling to get some dates arranged for that. Any other comments or queries? No. So we'll. Well, I have to. Yes, we do have to take a vote on this. So just all those in favour, please show. I think that's unanimous. No one against. No abstentions. That's the final item on the agenda. So thank you, colleagues, for your patience and contributions, and no doubt there'll be some discussion outside this chamber about one of the items on today's meeting, but that's there we are, and I'll close the meeting at 22 minutes past 12. So thank you very much.